Billions of people on every continent are praying right now to a being that might never have actually been a god. There were 5 ancient civilizations. They never met, they never even knew the other existed. But each one left the same exact warning, carved in stone or written on scrolls. The gods did not come from Earth, they came from the sky. Here's the proof you don't even need a history book for. Right now, when you pray, where do your eyes go? Up. Nobody taught you to do that, you just do it. Every human, every country, every religion. Always the same direction. And here's the goosebumps part. I'm not talking about just one ancient culture, I'm talking about all of them. Egypt said it, India said it, the Maya said it, even cavemen before anyone had invented writing said it. That's not a coincidence, that's a pattern. And patterns don't lie. So here's the real question we're asking today. What if Sky God was never just a nice old story? What if it was a memory? Let's start before Egypt, before India, before the wheel was even invented. Let's start in the Sahara Desert. Back when it wasn't a desert at all. Picture this. About 8,000 years ago, the Sahara is green. Lakes, grass, animals everywhere. Early humans lived there, painting on rock walls the same way bored kids today doodle on their bedroom walls when their parents aren't looking. In 1933, a French explorer is walking through a place called Tassili Nager when he finds thousands of these paintings. Most of them are completely normal. Hunters, animals, people dancing. But one painting is not normal. It's huge, over 6 feet tall, a round head with no real face. No mouth, no nose, just smooth and blank, almost like it's wearing a helmet. Around this giant figure, smaller human-shaped people stand with their arms raised up, like they're looking at something they have never ever seen before. The explorer gave it a nickname, half as a joke. He called it the Great Martian God. He probably didn't expect that nickname to still be used 90 years later. Now, real archaeologists will tell you it's probably just a shaman wearing a ceremonial mask. Totally possible. People did that kind of thing. But here's the part that gets me every single time. That exact same design, round head, no face, glowing outline, shows up again, thousands of miles away, on a completely different continent, painted by people who had zero contact with the Sahara. In northern Australia, in a region called the Kimberley, the local Aboriginal people have ancient paintings of spirit beings called the Wandjina. These are some of the oldest paintings on Earth. The Wandjina have round heads, glowing rings around their faces, and no mouths. Local legend says they came down from the sky to bring the rain, and they chose to have no mouth so they would never use too much power by accident. Sahara, Australia. 2 groups of ancient humans, separated by an entire ocean, with no boats, no contact, no shared language. And they both looked up and drew the exact same lonely, blank-faced visitor. Coincidence? Maybe. I'm not the judge here. You are. But it gets weirder. Because once we leave the Stone Age and step into the first real kingdoms on Earth, the sky doesn't just visit anymore. It starts giving instructions. Everyone talks about the pyramids. We're not. Pyramids are old news, literally. Instead, let's talk about a pharaoh almost nobody puts on a t-shirt, Akhenaten. Before him, Egypt worshipped dozens of gods. Gods with falcon heads, jackal heads, cat heads. Standard Egyptian stuff. Then Akhenaten takes the throne and does something that had never happened before in Egyptian history. He throws out every other god. All of them. He says there is only one god now. And this new god doesn't look like an animal. It doesn't look like a person at all. It's a glowing disk in the sky called the Aten, with rays of light shining down. And at the very end of every single ray, there's a tiny hand, reaching down toward the people below. Just picture that for a second. A glowing circle in the sky. Beams of light touching the earth. One single god, instead of dozens. I don't know about you, but if a giant glowing disc reached a hand of light down at me, I'd probably also throw out my other gods on the spot. Here's where it gets even stranger. Akhenaten and his family are shown in Egyptian art with very unusual bodies. Long, stretched out skulls, thin arms, long necks. Historians have normal explanations for this. Maybe it was just the art style of that time, or maybe it ran in the family genetically. But there's something else from this same time period that almost nobody talks about. In 1898, archaeologists in a place called Saqqara found a strange little wooden object, just a few inches long. Most experts call it the Saqqara bird, and they believe it's a small statue, maybe a toy, maybe a decoration shaped like a falcon. But a few aviation engineers who studied its shape noticed something odd. Its wings aren't shaped like a normal bird's wings. They're tilted at the exact angle that creates lift, the same way an airplane wing works. A decorative bird statue doesn't need to be aerodynamically accurate. So why is this one? Maybe it's nothing. Maybe some ancient Egyptian carver just got lucky. Or maybe somebody, somewhere, had actually seen something fly. And speaking of strange skulls, Egypt wasn't the only ancient culture obsessed with the shape of power. In Peru, on the complete opposite side of the planet, archaeologists have found hundreds of ancient skulls with that same long, stretched shape. They're called the Paracas skulls. Most experts agree these were shaped on purpose. A baby's soft skull was wrapped tightly with cloth as it grew, slowly stretching it. A real human practice, no aliens required. But ask yourself this: why would two ancient cultures on opposite sides of the world, with zero contact, both decide that the most godlike, most royal shape for a human head was a shape no human head naturally has? Nobody knows for sure. But Egypt and Peru were not the only ones obsessed with the sky and the shape of those who supposedly came from it. On the other side of the world, in a country famous for its colors, its festivals, and its spices, there's a single word that has been hiding this exact same mystery in plain sight, inside a language still spoken by over 1 billion people, right now, today. In Sanskrit, one of the oldest languages on Earth, the word for God is Dev. You've probably heard it before: Devi, Mahadev, Diwali. Dev comes from an older root word, Dev, which means to shine, or even more directly, sky. So when ancient people in India said the word for God, they weren't just saying powerful being or creator. They were literally saying the shining one, or the one from the sky. Not a metaphor, a built-in description hiding inside the language itself. Their word for God quite literally means thing from the sky, and that word is still spoken by your neighbor, your coworker, your favorite movie right now. And it doesn't stop at one word. Ancient Indian texts describe something called a vimana, loosely translated as a flying palace or flying chariot. In stories like the Ramayana, gods and kings travel across the sky in these vimanas, crossing oceans in hours, fighting battles in mid-air. Normally I'd say, okay, that's just an old myth, like a flying carpet. Every old culture has flying machine stories. That alone isn't unusual. What is unusual is a text called the Samarangana Sutradhara, which doesn't just say there were flying machines. It goes further. Some translations describe parts, materials, how things were supposedly built. Not a poem about magic, something that reads disturbingly close to an instruction manual for a machine that humans hadn't invented yet. Could this just be ancient imagination, centuries ahead of its time? Sure, totally possible. But picture being a farmer in ancient India thousands of years ago who has never seen metal fly, never seen anything man-made leave the ground, and somehow someone around you is describing flying vehicles in mechanical, technical detail. Where do you even get an idea like that if you've truly never seen anything like it before? Unless, of course, somebody had. Now remember how I said 5 completely different ancient civilizations all left behind the exact same secret? Get ready, because there's a 6th case. And it might be the spookiest one in this entire video, because this one isn't ancient at all. It's still alive right now, today. In West Africa, in a country called Mali, there's a tribe called the Dogon. They live in small villages built into the side of cliffs. And for hundreds of years, they've passed their religion down by word of mouth, the exact same way ancient humans passed down survival knowledge back in the Stone Age, long before anyone on Earth had invented writing. And at the center of that religion is one tiny, specific star. Not the sun, not the moon. A single star called Ziggy Tolo. We call it Sirius, the brightest star in our night sky. Here's where it stops making sense. The Dogon don't just admire that star. Their priests describe a second, invisible star orbiting right next to it. They call it Po Tolo. According to them, this hidden star is incredibly tiny, but unbelievably heavy, heavier than anything they could compare it to. They even described how long it takes to travel once around Sirius. About 50 years. Now sit with that for a second. You cannot see this second star. Not with your eyes, not even close. It's too small, too dim, hiding right next to a star that's far brighter. You need one of the most powerful telescopes on the planet just to find it. In 1862, astronomers calculated that this hidden star must exist, just from the way its gravity was tugging on Sirius. Nobody actually managed to photograph it until 1970, using equipment most countries on Earth didn't even own yet. And the orbit time they finally measured, after all of that work? About 50 years. The exact same number the Dogon had already been saying for generations in a village that had never owned a telescope. I don't know about you, but the first time I read that, I put my phone down and just stared at the wall for a second. It doesn't stop there either. According to the same tradition, the Dogon also describe rings around Saturn and 4 moons circling Jupiter, none of which are visible to the naked eye. Meanwhile, I personally struggle to find my car keys most mornings, and this isn't just an old story they tell once and forget. Every 60 years, almost like clockwork, the Dogon hold a real ceremony called the Sigui. Masked dancers perform a ritual that, according to their tradition, has been repeated the same way for centuries, tied directly to this same star system, keeping one single appointment passed down exactly the same way every 60 years without fail for generations. That's not just a story, that's a memory on a timer. So here's the question nobody studying this can fully answer. In a time before telescopes, before universities, before real outside contact reached deep into that region, how does anyone get information about something the human eye physically cannot see? Now, I have to be fair here because this channel isn't about tricking you. When other researchers visited the Dogon decades later, some couldn't find this exact story being told the same way anymore. A few historians think the French scientist who first recorded all of this back in the 1930s may have accidentally shared some astronomy facts with Dogon elders first, and it somehow found its way back into their own retelling. It's a real, ongoing argument, and there's no perfectly clean answer. But here's what's left, even in the most doubtful version of this story. A village with no observatories, no universities, no telescopes of their own, ended up holding details about an invisible star that modern science only managed to photograph decades later. So let's count what we've got so far. A cave painting in the Sahara of a glowing god with no face. A pharaoh in Egypt worshipping a single disk with hands of light. A word in India that simply means thing from the sky. And now, a living village whose entire religion is built around a star nobody should have been able to see. Different deserts, different oceans, different thousands of years, and a tribe still walking the earth today, repeating the same secret their ancestors whispered long before history books even existed. If this was just one story, sure, call it a coincidence and move on with your day. But we keep finding the exact same fingerprint over and over in places that should never have known about each other. Someone, or something, left that fingerprint everywhere. And the Maya didn't just leave a fingerprint, they left an entire calendar. And no, we're still not talking about that famous carved stone lid everyone's already seen 100 times. We're past that one too. Let's talk about their creation story instead, called the Popol Vuh. In it, the very first gods aren't even on Earth. They live in the sky, and one of their names literally translates to Heart of Sky. From up there, they create humans, animals, and the entire world just by speaking it into existence. Then there's Kukulkan, the feathered serpent god. According to Maya legend, Kukulkan arrived from somewhere far away, taught the Maya people mathematics and the movement of the stars, gave them an unbelievably accurate calendar, and then left, flying off toward the sky, promising to return one day. Here's the part that should genuinely freak you out. The Maya tracked the planet Venus with a level of accuracy that modern science didn't match again until telescopes existed. Their calculations, written in something called the Dresden Codex, stay accurate to within a few hours, across thousands of years, using nothing but eyes, patience, and math. Why would a civilization with no telescopes obsess over one single planet in the sky with that much precision? And unless they believed something, or someone, important had come from that exact direction. Sky gods made of light, with hands reaching down to Egypt. Sky gods with round, blank, helmet-like heads, watched silently by early humans on 2 different continents. Sky gods who taught math and the stars in India, described in texts detailed enough to sound like an engineering manual. Sky gods in Central America who flew away promising to return, a word for God that simply means from the sky. Different deserts, different oceans, different languages, different thousands of years. Same exact story. Now here's a question that might genuinely keep you up tonight. If ancient humans all around the world, separated by oceans they couldn't cross and centuries they couldn't compare notes across, somehow ended up believing the exact same thing, what's more likely? That they all just happened to imagine the same story completely by accident? Or that they were all describing the same visitors, using whatever words their own language happened to give them? A caveman in the Sahara didn't have the word astronaut, so he painted a blank, glowing face instead. A pharaoh in Egypt didn't have the word spacecraft, so he carved a glowing disk with hands of light instead. A sage in ancient India didn't have the word aircraft, so he wrote Vimana instead. A Maya priest didn't have the word visitor from the stars, so he simply said heart of sky. Different words, same sky, same story. And if even a small part of that is true, it means something even bigger is hiding underneath all of this. Because if these gods really did appear in front of early humans back in the Stone Age, back when we were still just learning how to use fire and draw on cave walls, then our ancestors weren't worshipping the sky by random accident. They were remembering something. And that leads to one last question. One I'm honestly not brave enough to fully answer in this video. If they came once, taught us, shaped us, and then left, What if they never actually said goodbye? What if they only ever said, "See you later"? Honestly, that thought alone is the reason I can't look at the night sky the same way anymore. If you want to find out what they might have left behind here on Earth, hit subscribe right now, because that is exactly what we're digging into in the next video. And trust me, it's even stranger than blank-faced gods and flying chariots.